Namaste to all of you. Welcome to a new episode of the Force Niyama podcast. My name is Katerina Fiadiuk. I'm an Iyengar Yoga student and the host of this podcast. Today, I'm excited to share with you a conversation with Neeta Datta. Neeta started attending yoga classes with Guruji in Mumbai in 1975. Her father, Hasmukh Mehta, who had also been studying under BKS Iyengar, guided all of his children to join Guruji's classes. As a teenager, Neeta was initially reluctant to take up yoga, but after her first class with Guruji, there was no thought of not going to yoga classes. She was mesmerized, and yoga has naturally become a part of her life. She started assisting Guruji in his classes in Mumbai after a few years and continued to do so until she moved to the US in 1987. Neeta now lives and teaches in Cupertino, California. She is the elder sister of Birjoo, Rajvi, and Aarti Mehta, who are also highly regarded Iyengar Yoga teachers. In the first part of the interview, Neeta speaks about the importance of going beyond the words and instructions in yoga. She reminds us that words have limited meaning and that language cannot express everything. We have to observe and absorb. We all have to be open about everything, rather than just take words. May this interview be of help in your own journey. Now, let me welcome Neeta Datta. Before the interview, Neeta genuinely asked me about the idea behind this project and the purpose of the podcast, and she shared some of her thoughts on documenting certain experience, information, and putting it in a more solid form, like books, podcasts, interviews, when it could be of help and when it could become limiting, and what we all have to be alert to.
So this is what I've noticed, and I could be wrong, and you'll see this in my conversations off and on, that I tend to go back between East and West a lot because just being here in the West, like living here and have been here for so long, that yes, in West, we tend to document a lot of things, which in some aspect, it's excellent because people get that idea, whatever people's journeys or just the path they take, everything. Which is even history books, everything is written, documented, even the religious books documented, Whereas for us, it's totally different. I mean, I remember after Guruji's passing, one of the Indian students kind of asked me, "Hey, can you talk about Guruji? Can you do this?" And at the time, I mean, I said yes, but I didn't follow through, not because of anything. Of course, I came back here. But it's like, it's not that of a need in that sense, because we tend to lean towards something I would call more subjective, because it's the experience and not the words. So it would be really, sometimes I feel the blending of the two is important, but we either are in one realm, which is totally subjective. That's how the Vedas evolve, right? I mean, everything. And here, on the other hand, we have everything documented, which is great, but you cannot stick to that document. The documents are vast. We just stick to that one perspective that we get. And we don't realize that there are so many perspectives to all these things. I think that's where we get a little bit confused or lost. You see, it's like lawyers, they keep on refining words. Why? Because you want to, or loopholes in taxes or wherever, because when you try to verbalize and articulate, even there you will find that you cannot really give that sense as much as you would have been able to without words sometimes. And both are necessary. I'm not saying that one is better. Both are necessary, but unfortunately, the important thing is for us, whoever listens to podcasts or whatever, I mean, reading books, we have to realize that there is more than what we are reading at this time. I mean, which you must have seen in Guruji's books and everything. Each time you read a book, I mean, same book, same everything. And it's not just Guruji's books, many books. And you will realize, wait, you come across a different meaning because we are in a different frame of mind that day, or we've evolved, so-called, a little bit more matured, So those things change, and that we need to understand, I think. I mean, these are great. I really feel that, but I also realize that it can be limiting.
Yes, so it should
As
not be
you
a substitute for the practice and for living what we
No, I
aspire to
mean,
live.
just going deeper, because the thing is, I'll give you a joke. It's true, but for me, it was a joke. There was a person in Mumbai. He literally asked Guruji, what size chappals you wear? What size? And he actually looks at his kurta, like what size do you wear? And for a moment, I thought maybe he wants to buy and gift something. But it wasn't that. It was something that he he wanted to wear, thinking whatever he thought. Like, see, again, I cannot decide what he's thinking. And that was hilarious because by wearing those kurtas or wearing that size or the same kind of chappals, you cannot be Guruji. You see? I don't know what to say. So sometimes we get caught up in those things and forget the essence completely. Anyway.
And that was the genius of Guruji, that somehow he was always close to the essence. And I heard some teacher, I was listening to some interview, said that, he was not studying the books. He was not in the beginning, but then he studied it just to validate his own experience. So
exactly. That is the uniqueness of Guruji. And what happens is anything we say, anything we do, if you're just saying it superficially, that effect is going to be different. Okay, when I say superficially, I don't really connect. It's just with my head and I'm just saying something. And that connection, it could be even telling your students, like, or children, okay, you don't do this, this is not good, whatever. I'm just saying something, right? But there is no effect. But on the other hand, the moment I'm connected with myself, this is the self, my core. And when I say something, that effect is going to be more profound because it is coming from within, which has passed all these superficial layers. Okay. What happens when Guruji was teaching, Guruji was true to yoga, true to his teaching. He didn't do it because what people will think. He didn't do it. He did it for himself. He learned for himself. I mean, in the sense that he was so much within, so connected with that core, that when Guruji, and this is my personal experience, but I'm sure many, many students will tell you, direct students, that when he said something, even if he was upset, quote unquote upset, I use these words because no, he wasn't upset. In that moment, he was so, he wanted you to experience that particular whatever he was trying to get you to understand or experience. And in that moment, even if he got, again, quote unquote, mad at you or whatever, or hit you, which is the people's words they use, which I totally don't agree, but what happens is it doesn't even touch you in that manner which the onlooker looks at it. Again, that's objective. They look at it differently. But for the person who goes through, in the sense who experiences it, it's a blessing because he walked you through that path. He actually pulled you out of that mundanity and got you to that level to experience that state, you see. And this I have noticed in many things, like many times when I say something, I mean, I've done this even with my students in class or even with children. Like, I'll say something, okay, do this, it has no meaning, but the moment that comes from that force from within, and that's why when you hear Guruji's voice, the voice itself was so powerful that he didn't have to use any spiritual words, philosophical words. He got you into that state completely. You didn't know. When you left class, you knew, even as a beginner, you knew that yes, you were completely mesmerized in that sense, because those 2 hours with Guruji, you had nothing connected with your mind which is drawing you outward. It was completely within, without using one word which could be a spiritual in that sense, like talking spiritual. He got you to experience that, that part of Guruji, which is very unique. So his practices were so, I'm not saying strong in the physical sense, but so connected with himself that whatever he said, it was like it was coming from within. His experiences were coming, and all he did is he validated what the scripture said. So whether he is on the right path. You see, what any books, scriptures, whatever they said. And so that is why it wasn't like when a literate person just talks, reads scriptures and talks, it doesn't touch you as much. I mean, they are great people, I won't say no. And yet, no, it doesn't give you that experience which Guruji could give. Anyway, I always feel that that's why when people try to bring scriptures and talk philosophy, oh, it's great. But the philosophy itself doesn't give you the experience. It doesn't even give you even a little bit of idea of what it is. It's just in your head again. So that doesn't connect you to that within you.
So what do you think allowed him, maybe is not the right word, but because it feels that he had a lot of inner freedom. He was independent from anybody and anyone's opinion.
Yes.
How did that happen?
One thing we have to realize, so what we have is we have one which is called the hard drive, like, and
Mhm.
then you have the other part of it, which is the soft. So now here what happens, yes, so all of us are born in some aspect equal. Most of us, everything is similar. But what is it? The software within us, the hardware and the software. The software within us is different. Makeup within us is different. Some of it is because of environment, etc., which is in this life. But a lot of it has come from the past. Whether you believe in past life or not is immaterial. Even if you didn't believe, obviously there is difference even between the two siblings who grew up together in the same environment. There's still going to be a lot of difference in everything, which we see in day-to-day life. So in Guruji's case, I cannot pinpoint because I mean, I wouldn't know that, and it would be wrong for me to just say, oh, I know, because no, I don't. But I do know that, yes, there is, so it could be him, his nature, which was
Mhm.
perhaps even before, it may have been like, even when he had TV, when he was a kid, it may have been where he didn't care, or maybe he did care, but eventually you grow out, or it surfaces later, it manifests later. It's there inherently, and sometimes circumstances. Now it could be that too, I really don't know, but I do know that for him, and this would be for all of us, we have to go to that source within us. And so that was what Guruji was. When we talk about source, you must have heard people talk about Guruji. He was very childlike, and there are all these scientists, great scientists also. I think it was Newton and maybe somebody else, but like, oh, I feel like a child on the sea connecting pebbles, or looking at these
Mhm.
beautiful pebbles, things like that. So what is the difference between us and children? Because they connect so well with their source. So a child, when it cries, it just cries and it forgets about it. There is no baggage. So with Guruji, if he got angry at you, again, these words I use is just, that's the only way I can describe for all of us to understand. Doesn't mean he was angry, but even if he was in that sense angry, um, he was just like a child in that moment, because he wanted that from you to understand. His inherent nature was that he wanted to us to understand something, get to that state which he was helping us walk. And so when Guruji said these things, there were no other things involved. Like child, he was there, he was annoyed, angry. Why? Because like he said, many times you've heard this even in Prashantji's talks, that I am a Kshatriya, I'm a Brahman at certain times, Kshatriya when I'm teaching. And so these things he wanted us to get. And so that, but in some sense, we have to realize that he was like a child. There was this purity within him, connection with his inner core. And that's why you don't get bothered by following the path people have taken. You see, because the day you realize, and I mean, I talk to people sometimes and they'll say, oh, what will so and so say? What will so and so? It's very common. Or, oh, people can, I do this thing so that people feel good, whatever. No, it is us. We are doing it for us. It's not the selfish me, but it is internally that me which I connect with. I'm doing it for myself. Even the yoga we do, we may start with, we means I didn't, but most people start with certain, reasons why they start, maybe because my back was hurting. I'm just giving mundane, but this is what mostly people start with. And so when you start with that, I understand at the time, but eventually you come to a state where you have to realize that I am in no control of what you are thinking of me, or what you will think of me, or this interview. I'm just giving an example. What I have control is only over myself. The day I realize that, I will be free of a lot of bondages. The bondages are my creation, my shackles. So the day I realize this one particular thing, I will be free of shackles. Now, in Guruji's state, I think he was way, way ahead. So I don't think he needed he needed the books more to see that he's on the right path. And this is, I've seen with many, quite a few, spiritual, I won't say teachers, because they didn't consider themselves teachers. They lived their life and people just followed. But with those people, you saw these things, not those who called themselves spiritual leaders or whatever. In those you won't see. You will only see in those which were like really so connected with themselves that people could just see them, and you just feel there is this aura about them, like, and I've seen this with Guruji when we traveled. Like in France, there was a policeman. I mean, he doesn't speak English. The policeman, he was French. Guruji is, and Guruji and he's writing some tickets, and Guruji just jokes, love letters, and the guy just laughs. He doesn't understand, and yet he understood. You see, because it's the language is so deeper because it comes from within. It's not that those words even matter at that stage. So, I mean, there are many, many things you will see. So, yeah, I know it makes you laugh, but it's true. That was Guruji. So, that childlike essence in him was always there. That's why he could connect with youngest, little ones, even the very tiny ones, with older people, everybody. And I mean, I always felt that. I could see it in my children. I could see as myself as a teenager when we started. So that closeness was there. You could feel. There was no wall there, no superficial curtain there or a wall. He didn't need it. But all this is because he was like child in that sense. I'm saying the childlike is because that purity was there, that connection with himself was there. So that's why I don't think again, this is my thinking. I don't think he needed to go to the scriptures or books to do it. He did it and he experienced it and then he checked it, which is why he's different. Yeah.
Could you please share a little more about the beginning of your journey in yoga? When did it happen? How you were introduced to Guruji?
My father, okay, so it's going back in time. My grandmother, my dad's mother, she was very much into, well, not just the health aspect, the whole total health, what we call the complete holistic health. Okay. So she was very much spiritual. She was very much into being healthy. What you hear today, she was back then. Okay. And so she was very keen that her kids could, also learn yoga. And so part of it was she initiated my dad and his sister into yoga. It was a larger family, but these two were the ones, I don't know why. But these two were the ones who were introduced to yoga, and they used to go to what they would call akhada. Akhada, if you literally translate, would be like a gym, but it wasn't a gym. I'm talking years ago. My dad was always, it's interesting that he always was fascinated, not just fascinated, but he really took to yoga, whereas his sister didn't. So what happened is whenever, I mean, he would go anywhere, if there was something about yoga, there was that inherent, like I said, we all have different software. And in his case, though the sister did it, she never took to it. And he would always have this inclination to know more about it. Even his books, he would read a lot, everything spiritually. So what happened is one day, this was in Mumbai, and he bumps into, this is so weird, but he bumps into a German guy in Bombay. And he was close to some Hare Krishna, whatever was going on in Mumbai, because we were kids. And he asks my father about some instructions, some directions and all. And my father talks and he says, oh, I'm here for this. And then also I want to go and see Mr. Iyengar. Who's Mr. Iyengar? Like how the conversation goes on. And he says, oh, he's a yoga teacher. And so my father says, okay, I'll take you. Can you imagine, out of the blue, nothing, you don't know this person, nothing, and I'll take you. So they decide to meet up and he decides to take him to Guruji. Now, where they go, I don't know whether it was in Mumbai, Pune, I really don't know. But he goes. And funny thing is, when they go there and they ask Guruji, Guruji says yes to my father. You can join my classes. And this person, no, he wasn't allowed. Okay. So that's it. So my father starts attending Guruji's Mumbai classes. He would come every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and he would teach. And that's how my father got introduced. He knew nobody in the Iyengar Yoga classes, but he started. And so he continued for 4 years. He would talk about Guruji and whatever, experience he had within that 2 hour classes each time he went. And one day he just tells me, Birjoo and I, my brother, I've talked to Guruji. He must have talked to Guruji, and he asked Guruji, can I bring my son and daughter to your classes? Again, it's very interesting. Guruji says, I still don't understand all these things, the events, the way they take place. Guruji says, Hasmukh, I cannot refuse you. He hasn't seen us. He says, no, I cannot refuse you. And next Sunday, beginning of the month, we go, Birjoo and I. Of course, oh my gosh, we were reluctant teenagers. My argument was, I'm healthy, I'm fine, I have nothing wrong. Why do I need to do yoga? So I'm talking about this many years ago, where we still had these limitations in our head, and of course, Birjoo is like, I'm fine. I don't know what, I mean, he had his sets of arguments. And my dad says, touch your toes. Of course, I barely managed, but it is like, just barely touching and putting in so much effort, but I can touch my toes. So see, I don't need to go. And my brother says, he's tall. So he could not touch. And so he says, you are going. So both of you are going, and that's about it. So we go. So in some aspect, it's really nice when you think back that parents could tell you that, not like, how can my parents say, well, I live in a different culture, but there are people who'll say these things. How can my parents force me? No, I think it's okay. When you have the ability to think clearly, that's when you can take over, but not before that. So anyway, I may be harsh, but this is who I am. So then, we go to, Guruji's class. And it's funny because my youngest sister, Aarti, was there with us. And she was like 4 years old, 3 years old. I mean, she was really young. And Guruji says, he was shocked because he says, oh, these two are fine. Now, again, I may be mixing it, but I do remember Aarti coming, and Guruji says, she's too young. But we were, already there. He didn't bring her. She just came because she wanted to see. Obviously, she wasn't going to do. But it's funny. So yeah, we attend, and it's for me, at least I can say for myself, it was just where I don't remember after that ever arguing with my dad about not going to yoga class. It was like just so, I don't know whether it was mesmerizing. I really don't know. But we just started. And the one good thing I feel, one thing was Guruji, people may say whatever they say, again, it's their experience. But for me, I felt Guruji was so warm. So he knew how to, again, connect with a teenager. So he didn't do anything where he didn't have to say anything, but the way he encouraged me, it was amazing. I just felt I can, not that I could do anything, but yet I felt so good about it. And believe me, it is more here good because physically the legs and the arms and body and everything was stretched out or hurting, but you liked it. And you looked forward to going to classes. For me, I can speak for that. For Birjoo, he will be able to say himself. But yeah, this is what it was. So this is how I started, thanks to my father. And my father always thanked his mom. So for introducing him to yoga. So you see, it's just amazing how things work.
How about your kids? Are they also practicing?
So it's funny again, because it's family, right? So what happens is when I was pregnant, of course, I continued practicing yoga. I used to, always continued. There was no doubt about it. And so even when they were little, I have two children, and they are like 1.5 years apart. So especially I do remember certain things. It's so funny because with children, when I would practice, the one set of asanas I could barely practice were forward bends because they cannot see you. So they didn't like, especially when they were older. But they loved when I did Shirshasana. They loved Sarvangasana, and that was, I think, most hilarious because every time I would be in Sarvangasana, one of them had to sit on me and I could feel their cushy diapers. But the point is, they saw me from their I think from their womb, from the womb, being in the womb itself. So for them, yoga was nothing. It was nothing out of the ordinary. It was just a part of life, which we were introduced maybe relatively later. For them, they were just part of it. Like you eat, you brush your teeth, it was part of it. So there was no difference for them. And I do remember every time. And there are times with kids when they want attention. I mean, they want you to be around because they really want whoever it is. And in my case, being a mom, and the mom is generally home with them, so they feel that. So yes, they wouldn't want me to practice. No, my forward bends were like the least I could practice. Everything else, and the ones they really loved were back arches, because they would say, oh, we are going under the tunnel, those kind of things. And then when they were older, they would join in, like, the ones they loved was Surya Namaskar cycle, because, oh, like, mommy, let's go. So, okay, bullock cart, because we used to go to India every year. And so they were very, very much, exposed to Indian everything. So they would say, I would say, okay, we'll go bullock cart speed, and then we will go the car speed, and then we will go this, oh, we have to go airplane speed, and yes, and then of course whatever, you skip some asanas because they would, but they are doing this airplane. So you see, you just let them take over in some aspect, where they are enjoying and we are enjoying. It was never yoga asana. However, when they went to India, which we did every year, they would, when they were little, of course, it was like whatever they did, they just did. And I mean, I would go, they would come with me. I remember my oldest, when I first went to India with him, he must be 9 months old. No, 11 months old. And he was crawling. He hadn't started walking at the time. And Guruji's classes, and I would attend Guruji's classes. So he would be crawling around in class, if at all, especially when you're in Sirshasan, because he wanted to look at everyone's faces. But that's it. There was never any disturbance from him, because he knew this is yoga, mommy practices, So there were things, and not just me, because the whole family did. My whole family does it. So they knew that they had to be in yoga room. They were disciplined. At home, they could expect anything, like mommy will do this, that. But yeah, so they started doing it in that manner. It was never a formal education until when they grew older. My father would just tell them, you guys have to attend Birjoo Mama. Mama is uncle, so Birjoo Mama's class, or you have to attend this Masi's class, this aunt's class, this aunt's class. You have to attend everyone's classes. And 6 o'clock in the morning, they would get up, because all our classes were 7 o'clock. They'd get up, shower, and go. That's it. Now, with me, I have never taught them formally, unless they've attended 1 or 2 workshops where I'm teaching. My younger one has, or older one may have, I don't know. But it was always with other family members that they attended. And they would also sit in class. Even when I was in Pune, they'd be sitting there watching. And same way, so one day Prashantji must have told, oh, you guys are sitting, you can start joining. And so they started attending his classes. So you see, I mean, it's not like there was any formal education inside as such, because they grew up with it. So my children know. I have now, though there are people who tell me that, why don't you ask them to do this, do this? No, I don't need to. I don't need to. You don't have to teach your family. They learn. They learn from observing. And this is what I learned from Guruji too, because he wouldn't teach his family members.
Mm-hmm.
They learn from observing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the kids just join they do it. And today they'll just do it because, oh, they feel good, whatever. They have their reasons, but they'll do it. Now they
Mm-hmm.
are not with me at this point, right? But they'll still do it because you've not forced them to do it. But that's different. Why I say this is contradicting earlier when I said my father had to. But that is when we were not able to make decisions, which we thought we were able to make decisions for ourselves. And for them, that when they were young, they just, like I said, they imbibed, they actually just soaked everything. So I didn't have to force them that you have to attend my classes. So the issue was, I had some students even tell me, why don't you ask your children to join? I said, I don't need to. And that's why I'm saying, because they had it. They had the experience, everything. And today also they know the value because they see it. But so it's again why I'm saying this contradiction. I'm bringing it to you is this is how it is in life. The same thing is different, even though I am their mother. For me, at the time, this was necessary. For them, I'm not saying it was necessary. It wasn't necessary, is because they just grew up with it. You see, so these contradictions also take place in life, and we cannot be rigid about it, because by limiting it, you're limiting yourself and you're limiting everything around you. And today we are going more by words, and that's why we limit everything. And so there are people who will also say, oh, Guruji said this, but Guruji said this. No, Guruji didn't say, he said it at the time, and that time is not repeated.
Yeah, that is so important what you said. And breaking this rigidity is a very important thing to do if one wants to progress and really have this lucid thinking in their life. When Guruji said to his student that yesterday was yesterday, and today you have to do what you have to do today. Like, don't repeat yesterday.
Yes.
And this could be applied to anything.
So, no, it is an everyday thing. I mean, this is for not just Guruji, which is what we have to realize. This is also true. Or most of my examples, I'll try to see that it's true. It's not something I'm making up. But so there was this, if you must have read or heard about it, that we had this Light on Life convention. And so prior to that, there must have been some time. Now, I don't know that, but I mean, no, then in the sense I wasn't present. But there were people who were being rigid about, you cannot, in Sarvangasana, you cannot have your head on the sticky mat. Where did it come from? I don't know. And maybe there must have been a reason. I'm not saying denying that, but it must have been a reason. But there was a time where I know some teachers must have mentioned, oh, but that some teachers actually chose to fail students because they had their head on the sticky mat, which is like ridiculous. If I was there, it was different. But I'm just saying those things I've heard. Again, I haven't experienced it or seen it, but I'd heard these things. Now at Estes Park, you have this 700, 800 students. And there are props, but there are not enough props, because sometimes you end up doing more, and everyone's got, say, two blankets, and you need 3 blankets, say, for example, for Sarvangasana. So Guruji must have said, and then where do you put your head, and whatever. So Guruji said, let your head be on a sticky mat, on the sticky mat. Use those 2 blankets for your shoulders, something like that. Okay, I'm just paraphrasing. I don't remember exact words, but in this direction it went. And there were, again, quote unquote, I say, senior teachers, because they consider themselves senior. And one of them or 2 of them were like looking at each other, and I was there, and they're looking at me and also looking at each other, and like, how can you keep your head on the sticky mat? And for me, it's hilarious, because if this instruction is coming from somebody else, I can understand. It is coming from Guruji. Why don't you realize that you are stuck in something where you shouldn't have been stuck? I mean, I just look at them and I'm like, I couldn't believe. I was in disbelief, because it's Guruji saying. You see, if you were saying or I was saying, sure, I had no knowledge, no understanding. I didn't know enough of Iyengar Yoga. I understand. You see, but that rigidity was so strong that they didn't even realize, even for a moment, that it is the same Guru who's telling you. So when people talk, oh, yoga, I don't have flexibility. You've heard that. I'm sure you have, because I always come across, oh, I'd like to do, but I'm not flexible. And it makes me laugh. But the thing is, the flexibility here is needed more than anywhere else. The thing is, more stiffer you are here, the stiffer you are here too, many times in your head. So that's the issue. It's that fluidity, lucidity, that's not there. And this is becoming more stronger now than before. Used to be in the West a lot. these things. And I would think that's partially because they didn't get exposed to Guruji as much as we were. For me, people from Mumbai or Pune, you saw him, especially Mumbai, I can say, we saw him every week. He was teaching us every week. So, you didn't have this confusion because you could see, every time you worked with him, in the sense he taught you. Whereas these people saw him at certain times. So they carried back only certain things. Even if they went to India, they came for the 3 weeks or whatever. And they went back, they carried that. You see? So I would give them the benefit of doubt because I understand. But sometimes I feel, I don't know whether that's true or it's just people's mindset, that we want everything so structured. Now, I always thought that West wanted everything structured and East was always where it didn't matter. That's how people are or were. Today it's different again, but that's they were. Yeah, it's like, do you practice yoga? Yeah, I do when I feel like, there are those kind of answers you'll hear more in India than you would hear here or from Indians, so called.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything was like totally another extreme, and here we are another extreme. That's what I'm saying. That equilibrium is not there, that middle path is not there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We just get caught up in one extreme or the other.
Mm-hmm. What would be your guidance to someone who is stuck in a certain mindset about yoga and what the practice should be like, or what the instruction, or what the certain way of asana should be? How this person could wake up for himself or herself?
I really feel that anything when we are teaching, it should not be like a sermon. So what happens is every time, even with my kids when they were little, anything, I wouldn't say, don't do this, do that. I never did that. Well, never is wrong, but most of the times I won't. Again, because never becomes that rigid statement. So I say it's not right. But so, and even with the students, I generally give stories and examples, real life examples, but I always end up giving that so that they understand. Now, I'll give you one example again. You'll learn more stories.
Stories are the best
Yeah,
instrument to
I think
learn.
it really helps you understand. I think through stories, it's like you start experiencing that, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so again, it becomes a little bit more subjective than objective because in language, it becomes objective. This is what I feel. Okay. So I'll give you this example. And I have done this in many, at least quite a few workshops, and there may be other examples, but right now I'm quoting this. What happens is people have, again, these rigid ideas. Now, I'm not saying you are rigid or I'm rigid because that's wrong. Wrong or right in the sense, because I'm just pointing a finger at you saying this. But what I want them to understand, so I give them this example. So years ago in 2000, I think, yeah, for sure, Gita ji was in the US in Pasadena, which is LA area. And she was there for a convention, okay, yoga convention. And LA culture is, each place has its own culture. So LA culture is where, of course, it's the Hollywood culture. There are other things where bodybuilding, etc., is, just the sports people do, surfing, etc. And so you have these people with huge biceps, etc. Okay, I'm giving you this background. Now she was teaching, or she asked people to go into Adho Mukha Svanasana, right? Everyone knows or supposed to know Adho Mukha Svanasana, what the pose is. Whether we know how to do it or not is immaterial, but we all think we know and we do to a certain extent. No. So what now? Think about it. There are those people with buff biceps and muscles here, right? And then they are doing Adho Mukha Svanasana, right? What happens to those people? Think about it. So there is a lot of tension in their neck. Clear? So what does she ask? She asks those people to spread their palms away. So if your normal distance is shoulder width, you go away, right? So you go 3 inches apart. So total it might be 6 inches. I'm just giving just a number. So she asked them to put slightly away, apart. So which they do. And sure enough, their pose is better, which is, if you think about it, it is common sense, right? So she has to modify this pose for the people around at that convention. And I'm not saying all the people were buff, but what she saw in front of her, that's what she taught. Those are the people she taught, right? So that's why she asked them to do this. Now, I mean, I was there, I saw it. I mean, I knew what was happening, and that's fine. Never even dawned on me what the repercussions of this would be 3 years down the road or 2 years down the road. I'm just saying, okay, I don't remember exactly. Like I said, I used to go back home every year, would attend Guruji's classes, Gitaji's classes, I mean, actually, to tell you the truth, Guruji wouldn't be teaching at the time. He'd always be in the back. In Pune, he really never taught I mean, unless he was actually teaching for some particular thing, but otherwise it wasn't like a regular ongoing classes like he used to teach in Mumbai. But if he was in Mumbai, of course, I would be, studying there also. But I would also go down to Pune and study there. And so I remember one day, Guruji sitting, I mean, practicing, that. Guruji would be somewhere in the institute in the back towards the windows. And Gitaji would be teaching, or, whoever is teaching the class is teaching, and Guruji would be, practicing. And somewhere he will also give instructions if he feels the need to. So that day in class, it was Adho Mukha Svanasana, which is, I believe it was, I don't know who was teaching. I really don't remember. That's something. But it was Adho Mukha Svanasana, and Guruji says, and he observes everybody. And he says, why are your arms so far apart? Bring your arms closer. Now realize one thing. Even when Gitaji must have said, I was there, but it wasn't like so far apart. But the point is, the arms were not, arms were a little farther apart than what they were. Now, over the years or over the couple of years, they've spread far out, for one. And secondly, this is Pune. It wasn't Los Angeles or Pasadena. So we have these arms far apart, and Guruji gets really, like, bring your arms closer. Okay. And so everyone brings their arms closer. The pose is good now. Everything is fine. And this is very interesting for me because I was present there. I'm present here. And I hear some of the students, and I won't name them, but those students who have been practitioners for years talk to the other students saying, this was a reaction. But Gitaji taught this. Did you realize you've taken this out of context and you've put it somewhere else? You see what I'm saying? She wasn't wrong at all. Guruji wasn't wrong at all. We did not know the context, and the teachers did not know the context. All they heard, instead of observing, all they heard were the words. Like if you read something, you just read it, totally unaware of what was happening, the environment, the circumstance, or whatever it was at the time. And so it is very important that you don't take words. You have to, for a teacher to understand, for a student to understand and experience, and even for us as teachers, when we carry that forward, you cannot just use those same words because the words are here. What I mean is they are coming from your head. They are not coming from internal within you. Because if it come internally, you would know right away something's wrong. You would know. Because you will then be able to feel, no, something's wrong. I don't get that effect. You see? Mm-hmm. So that is something which is lacking because people just use those words, pick up something from somewhere, drop it somewhere. Teachers, why? Guruji taught everybody. Then why is it that some are where they are and some aren't? He didn't hold back anything. So we have to learn to just observe, absorb what was he teaching or what were the teachings. And even for those who don't have Guruji, you still have to be open enough to understand. You see, even that's where all these things come in. Your practice comes in, your ability to observe comes in, and be open about everything rather than just take words, because again, the words will have limited meaning. His language is not just, language will not be able to express everything. At least I feel that. So what I do is with my students, or when I talk to them, I'll give these kind of examples in the beginning sometimes when needed, and let them know that these are the things. So you cannot just say so-and-so teacher said this. I will not even listen to it because no, the teacher said it because there must be a reason. What she saw, she may not give the reason, maybe again a different thing, but what she or he saw. And so you cannot just pluck something out and then take it there and say, so that's where we become rigid now. Because you say, oh, no, 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 but this is what Gitaji said. Sure, Gitaji said. I don't deny it. So that is important. I mean, you can be taught a lot of things, but some of these things still has to come from within. And that is really important. And so the flexibility part of it is because, yeah, I could see, why do I see, maybe I was blessed because I started young. Maybe I was blessed because I was able to practice. Guruji taught us. Gitaji would, after I think 89, after 82, I believe, 82, 83, Guruji would come every alternate weekends to Mumbai. The other weekend, one weekend we would have Gitaji, other weekend we would have Prashantji. So now we are going to, so it's the same yoga, but his expression, way of expressing would be different from Gitaji's or Prashantji's, because each one is an individual. They take you to that path, they give you that experience, but each one's way, because they are true to their nature, they will express it differently. So we were blessed, I think, really fortunate that we learned to have this really rich combination. And so maybe we could observe. I don't know. I speak for Mumbai people who were there at the time. I'm taking some things for granted. So I'm speaking for them. But I think that's why we were fortunate. So we learned a lot of things along the way, that you cannot be rigid, because if you are rigid, you will see solid difference between, oh, this is how Gitaji said, and I've heard these people say, or this is how Prashantji said. No, they are exactly same. But his expression, his language, Prashantji, may not have had the feisty nature of Gitaji. I'm just saying. So what happens, her way of saying will be different. His way of saying and expressing things will be different, because he thinks, he sees differently. His expressions are different from hers. But that doesn't mean they are different.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean, I mean, that Guruji was different, because Guruji had that feistiness within him. He had that way where he could express. And so each one of us is an individual. So when we just pick up things and just say it, it's not going to connect. And when it doesn't connect with students also, or whoever the recipient is. So as a mother to a child also, if I say something, my words will have value and meaning if I connect from there. I don't have to scream or shout, but they know that mom means this. And I can explain them in some different ways. Like I said, I give that, it's always a pictorial or something in the sense, so that it stays with people. They understand. I think that's more important, because words can be twisted. We can lift them out of context. Here it will be your understanding, I feel. So I try, whether we are successful or not, but we try. And that's important, I feel. There was a story of, you've heard of Swami Ramakrishna, Vivekananda's guru, right?
Yes.
So I mean, his ashram was on the other side, one side of the Ganges, and if people had to go, they had to go to the other side via, on the Ganges. And there's a story. Again, it's a story. I don't know. So there were two disciples, and they were taking a ferry from one end towards the, but they are in orange robes, saffron robes. And so somebody asks them, oh, are you this guru's disciple? And they say, yes. Somebody says something ill about their guru. So one disciple, not student, but disciple, gets really annoyed. How dare you say this about my guru? How dare, like my guru is. And then there is the other one, he was just quiet and he didn't do anything. He didn't fight for it. And the other one was just arguing, fighting. And there apparently, it seems, again, this is a story, so it can be, it can go any direction. The idea is to get the message across. So it may be totally changed over the period of time, and doesn't matter, like I said. So there is a fight, the literal fight, okay? And so anyway, that happens, and eventually, of course, they get off the ferry, they are back in their ashrams, and the other people go on with their life. Somewhere Sri Ramakrishna finds out about this, because people, they get to know things. So he calls for these two disciples and he asks them separately. He asks the one who was very aggressive, why did you have to fight? Do you think it would have made any difference to them? Okay, understand this. On the other hand, he talks to the other disciple. Did you not think that you have to protect or defend your guru? And so here is the same guru telling one to do one thing, which is totally contradictory to what he's telling the other. Because he's a guru, he knows he has to lift this aggressive person and move him to a state where he's not so aggressive. Whereas the guru knows that here is a person who nothing bothers him, but he needs to know that he can and he should be speaking up. Again, this is my interpretation, okay? But so what happens? So the same guru, now, if the two students were to exchange notes or the two disciples were to exchange notes, they would say, how dare he? He's asking me to do this, but he's asking you to do that. Do you understand? So these things are important. It is the whole, it's not just one part, not just even though they were in the same situation, their software makeup was different. And that's why the guru had to talk differently to each one. Because for one was unperturbed. It didn't matter. So he had to ask him. The other, he was so aggressive that he had to be calmed down. You see? So these are the things which are important. And so I tell them that don't pick words, even in class. So I'll tell them these things are important. Just don't pick words and start using them. Understand. So if you understand, there will never be any confusion. And to understand, you are not just here, you go way beyond. You are not in your head, you go internal. And that is what's going to bring out that richness as a student, as a teacher, everywhere. And I think that's what we have to learn from Guruji, rather than finding differences. I mean, apparent differences are always going to be there, you see, even between two siblings, same environment, you will find it always, especially in today's time, because we are, at least in the US, and I'm sure it's all over the world, the whole Me Too movement and equality movement and everything else. I don't deny it. I don't agree or disagree. I'm just an observer. But I'll try to tell you that, and somewhere this example was actually given somewhere, not exactly word for word, by Prashantji. So you have a 3-year-old in the house and you have a 15-year-old in the house, or 18-year-old. Okay, I mean teenagers are hungry, which, and they are growing. But you have a 3-year-old in the house, or a 2-year-old, or even 6-year-old, let's say. Are you going to be giving them equal amounts of food and say eat equally? Is that equality? Or on the other hand, there is a disabled person, and there is an, not to put down, but just to say that there is a person who has certain limitations, right? Whether it is physical, at this time, I'm looking at physical limitation, and then there is the other one. But I ask both of you to walk 2 miles a day. Is that equality? So equality, again, you make it all objective, but you have to realize what is this person's capacity, what is this other person's capacity. So even in equality, we have to find what are we talking about in equality. We are just looking at, again, that objectively. And that is why people suffer. In some aspect, they're suffering. Just go beyond the words, understand the depth of the word. The expression itself will have no meaning if it's just used out of context. And even in asana, that flexibility will be there when you understand. When I give these examples, I'm trying to give you different perspectives, different views. So somewhere they'll all come close together to make you understand that not one is perfect. It's a total perspective. We cannot just take one thing and just define it. And so with yoga, when people have this, these are limitations we've created in our mind. And after all, the mind only knows what it knows, that little bit, especially the external mind, the mind. But when you start connecting, you see the whole picture. And then you realize, no, this is just a part of it. It's not the whole.
This was the first part of the interview with Neeta Datta. The second and the third parts are coming shortly. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.